Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the May edition of the Staff Wellness and Health Booster Sessions. Our topic this month is compassion, kindness to ourselves and others with Cindy Kindred. My name is Chad Saxon. I'm Communications Coordinator with Shared Health Communications, and I will be your moderator today. We will get to Cindy in a few seconds, but we have a few little housekeeping items first. So, as we all know, COVID-19 has challenged health system workers to change how we conduct ourselves in the workplace, our homes, and our social connections. Excuse me, the screen just moved. Our social connections, as I said. These changes can sometimes feel overwhelming. To support health system workers and the public, Shared Health and our Psychological Health and Safety Committee partners have brought together skilled trainers from across the province to facilitate several booster sessions. Today's session will take participants through an acknowledgement of the current challenges related to the pandemic and discuss resilience building through self-compassion strategies. When individuals are kinder to themselves, their resilience is reinforced and they are better able to support their colleagues, benefiting the whole workplace. As I mentioned earlier, our presenter today is Cindy Kindred with Manitoba Blue Cross. Cindy has 10 years of employee assistance program experience as an intake worker, clinician, and member of the Employee Assistance Leadership Team. Cindy also has experience providing leadership to the intake team, providing counseling to youth and students from the Faculty of Health Sciences, providing counseling and consultation within the Addictions Management Program, and developing programming for adults and youth with substance dependency issues. Cindy completed her Master's of Education in Counseling Psychology at the University of Manitoba. Following Cindy's presentation, we will have a few minutes for questions. If you have a question throughout the presentation, please enter them into the chat feature on the GoToWebinar platform. And once we're complete, I'll pass the questions along to Cindy and we'll get you an answer. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be made available as a streaming video on demand on Shared Health's COVID-19 Mental Health Resources page. And with that, I will turn things over to Cindy.
Great, thank you, Chad. Just a quick check, you can hear me okay? Awesome, all right. Thank you, everyone, and just wanted to thank you all for this opportunity to present to everyone this afternoon. So my name is Cindy Kindred. My role is the Clinical Services Coordinator with Manitoba Blue Cross Employee Assistance. So my role today is to talk to you about compassion, and that includes kindness to ourselves, and how that can extend to the other individuals in our lives, including our workplaces, our personal lives, and any other relationships we might maintain. So without further ado, we'll jump in to our presentation. All right, so I'm going to actually just start with a personal story for you guys, because I kind of wanted to provide a little bit of background on why particularly I am presenting on compassion today, and kind of what the meaning of it is, because I think this has been a very significant theme that has arisen, and there's more and more research more recently in particular about how this, how compassion has helped us I guess survive, and what kind of impacts we've also had over the last couple of years throughout the pandemic. And so I just wanted to maybe explain my own personal backstory a little bit as to why this is such an important topic, both on a professional but also on a personal level for you. So so I am a first-time mom. I had my daughter through the pandemic in August of 2020, when things were pretty much at their height. And so it was, you know, a very significant experience just to become a mom in the pandemic, when, you know, it is already a pretty exciting but also very stressful experience. And if there's parents out there in the crowd, I'm sure you can relate and understand that it is quite a transition in your life. For me personally, though, what happened is I ended up experiencing some pretty significant and severe birth complications, which led to my daughter ending up in the ICU and myself in the ICU. I woke up 4 days later after I went into labor, intubated in the ICU, and didn't have a clue what had taken place. And so as they caught me up to speed and kind of explained what had happened, it was not only a very traumatic experience, but the lost time really added to the fact that I couldn't really make sense of the whole experience, let alone recognize I'd brought a baby into the world. So the reason why I share that is because that is where my personal compassion journey started. Because as you become a new parent, you do, like I said, go through a transition and kind of need help to understand what that transition means. But often I think we have a voice in us that sort of tells us or tries to guide us. And most times that voice can be quite critical. And mine was exceptionally critical, often telling me I needed to get better sooner so I could get to my child. And then once I was finally able to do that, I just felt this feeling of failure, incompetence. I couldn't do it because while I was trying so hard to physically heal myself from the whole birth situation, I was also trying to look after an infant. And on top of that, in a pandemic where there wasn't a whole lot of support because we were, fairly isolated at that time. So it was a big change and a big transition. And after coming home from the hospital and getting settled in, the journey really only began at that time. And it was quite the journey. And there were a lot of really difficult moments. And I have to say, on that journey, compassion is truly what helped me come through it. And it wasn't just compassion towards my daughter or to my husband, but it was compassion towards myself is where it really had to start. Because in order to even begin to extend that outwards to other individuals, I really had to recognize where that compassion needed to begin developing. And it started with things as simple as just recognizing where I was and what I was doing and being able to say the words, it's okay. It's okay that I'm in this place today. I don't have to be anywhere else. I can give myself permission to be here today and just be here, be present, and make that space. And that's kind of where it started, and eventually started to grow from that point on, where the more and more I was kinder to myself, the more I was able to overcome, the more and more I was able to develop and grow into my role as a parent, the more and more I was able to show compassion to other people, particularly my husband and his journey becoming a father, and also towards my daughter as well too, because sometimes as a parent we get stressed out really easily when they cry and we can't soothe them or support them, and you get really frustrated, and then that compassion kind of dissipates. But being able to be kinder to myself is really what allowed me to extend that beyond that point and extend outwards. And so that's kind of what really started this journey for me. And so that eventually translated over on a professional level when I came back to work and started to see the impacts of the pandemic on everyone, especially in the workplace, and what that entails and how hard it became for individuals to see themselves in their experiences, because if you can't see yourself, then you're likely not able to see other people. So my hope today is that I can extend that wisdom and experience forward to all of you and help you on your journey of compassion if it hasn't begun yet, or reinforce the journey you're currently on. So I'm going to start with explaining compassion fatigue. But before I do that, something I wanted to speak to is the fact that in the last 2 years, and I'm sure we're all pretty fatigued from talking about the pandemic, so I'm going to try and refrain from using it too much today, but I will reference the last 2 years because they've been pretty significant. And I think we've all been in a constant state of worry and concern, not only for ourselves, but for our loved ones, for our community. And being that everyone here today has been working for healthcare or in some sort of helping field in some capacity, your personal lives and your professional lives are all involved in this act of caring for others and helping. And so I think understanding compassion fatigue and what that actually means is going to be a huge component of even beginning to understand how to implement compassion into your life, because you need to know where it's lacking first. So what compassion fatigue is, it's the cost of caring for others and the emotional pain that people go through. It is the desire to want to help, to support, to heal, to help individuals recover from experiences in their lives. A lot of people will associate compassion fatigue also with vicarious trauma, because what you hear, what you feel, what you experience from other people are things that we take on, as much as we may not even recognize the impacts that that has. And so it's hard to just shut yourself off from that. And as good as we can be to try and maintain boundaries when we're constantly hearing stories, and I think, again, the last 2 years are very reflective of the ongoing information and not great news that we kept hearing through social media or on the news. You know, it was very hard to block that out when it's coming at you from so many different directions. And being in healthcare, you're hearing even more of that. So it's very difficult to filter that out or leave that outside of your life. And so we can very easily allow trauma or other people's experience to become our own. And everyone has a point of no return where we kind of hit a breaking point, and it's very hard to come back from that. And so beside that box there, there is a list of the different types of symptoms that you can notice in compassion fatigue. So I would encourage all of you today, you know, as you read through this list, I'll go through them very quickly here with you, but to take a moment to maybe reflect on that list and see, are you experiencing any of these things in yourself? Because you may have had some time to think about this or notice some of these impacts or these symptoms, and sometimes you haven't had that chance to stop and actually ask yourself. So I would really encourage you to kind of take a moment and think about that. Feelings of helplessness and powerlessness when you see constant human suffering. Reduced feelings of empathy and sensitivity. You know, empathy is our ability to recognize what other people are going through and sit in their space with them and give them the support that they might be needing. But it may get increasingly harder to be able to offer that to other people when you can't sit with your own things. Feeling overwhelmed and exhausted by work demands, feeling detached, numb, emotionally disconnected, loss of interest in activities that you used to enjoy, things that you found a lot of adrenaline out of, or things that allowed you to feel happy when you engaged in them. Increased anxiety, sadness, anger, irritability, difficulty concentrating and making decisions, difficulty sleeping or just general sleep disturbances at night. Physical symptoms in your body, headaches, nausea, upset stomach, dizziness, something that's not noted here, but even just physical pain in certain aspects of your body. Some people work desk jobs, so they're sitting a lot. So there's certain parts of their body that tends to compensate for the stress and where we hold it. For me personally, it's always neck and shoulders. And later on in today's presentation, I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of do a bit of your own scan to kind of see where some of those pains or stressors might resonate for you. Increased conflict in personal relationships, just generally interpersonal engagement, just being able to connect with other people can get harder and harder again when that capacity feels limited. Neglect of your own self-care. It's very easy sometimes to put that on the back burner because there's 100 other things that seem more important or more of a priority to you. Withdrawal or self-isolation. That's a very key one when it comes to compassion fatigue, because again, it is really difficult to sit with somebody else's stuff when you have such a hard time sitting with your own. So it's a lot easier to just not engage and limit the contacts that you have, especially, again, I'm sure working in healthcare, you're on the daily working all day with other people. And with that engagement, when you come home at the end of the day, you want to limit that as much as possible just to be able to save any remaining energy that you might have. And an increase in substance use as a way of self-soothing or self-medication to find any way to cope with whatever it is that you're dealing with. Okay, so I want to take a minute and explain to you the difference between compassion fatigue and burnout. Now, a lot of you may be asking, well, one, I don't really know if there's a difference. It doesn't seem like there could be because they do have a lot of overlap between them. And why does it matter to even know the difference between these two things? So I'm going to explain to you why I think that really matters. So over, again, the last while, and with all the work that I've been doing through Blue Cross in terms of offering support throughout the pandemic in so many different ways, something I've noticed people do is use the word burnout. very, very, very frequently, because it does capture certain essences of what we've been experiencing over the last while in terms of just hitting the wall and just not having the capacity to keep going. So in that case, yes, burnout would definitely explain what it is that we're experiencing. But often I would always hear people say, well, I feel burnt out, but it doesn't quite capture what it is that I'm feeling. I feel burnt out, but something else, or something's missing. I can't quite hit that. And sometimes in that discussion, I would bring up the theme or the phrase of compassion fatigue and kind of see these light bulbs go on, or kind of a question mark, like, what does that mean? And when I define it or explain it to people, they kind of have this aha moment where they, for a moment, feel connected to that phrase. And the big thing about phrases and identifying words is that the importance of a phrase is that language informs the story that we have. And that gives us meaning and understanding of our own narratives and putting some sort of context to what it is we're feeling, and gives us insight into different things that we may not have picked up on before, other than just the feeling and the experience. So words can really have such a significant impact. And that's why I think it's so important to define these things for you today, so you have an understanding in your narrative. This is something that I'm experiencing, but I've never been able to put a name on what it is. So there's really four big reasons, major reasons why individuals experience or four reasons why compassion fatigue and burnout are so different. So compassion fatigue is caused by the exposure to traumatic or emotional experiences. Burnout is something that occurs over time related to work-related attributes, such as stress on the job, engagement with coworkers, supervisors, or just potentially poor work culture. And it is something that does gradually increase with time. Compassion fatigue has a very rapid onset. You sometimes don't even pick up how much it can hit you because it's that quick in terms of how much it can kind of overpower, and it's very hard and fast. Whereas, like I said, burnout is emerging over a gradual period of time. And so you don't, again, maybe pick up on it until you're kind of reaching the end point where, again, you hear people say, I'm hitting the wall or I'm tapped out. Compassion fatigue is a term that describes the impact the impact of what helping others can do for us. Because the more and more and more we give, the harder it is to find the time and the space to keep filling that tank so that there's more to give the next day. Usually we're kind of coming back on empty, and because we don't have the opportunity, or we don't recognize the opportunity to kind of refill that tank, we go back the next day almost empty and give whatever is left until there's really nothing left to give again. Burnout, on the other hand, is a term that is, again, described by the impact of a stressful workplace or stressful work events. Compassion fatigue has a quicker recovery time than burnout does. And sometimes I like to compare this sometimes to how drugs can sometimes work. There's some drugs that have, they're fairly fast acting and they're in our system really quickly. And then there's others that work very gradually over time, but can have impacts on us over a longer period of time. So both situations, they will impact us. But in terms of how fast we see the impact, differs between the two circumstances. So compassion fatigue, you're going to see that quicker. With burnout, you're going to see that longer and over a gradual period of time. However, in terms of coming back from it, it's ongoing damage versus quick damage. And so that's why with compassion fatigue, it's actually a lot easier to come back from than burnout can be. I think it's safe to say, though, that the two are happening in junction with each other. I don't think that these things are happening separately. I think they're quite synonymous, and they're happening simultaneously in so many different ways. So really, when we're healing, we're really healing from both of these experiences at the same time. But to even begin to deal with the burnout, I think we have to start with the compassion fatigue. So this slide here, what I wanted to include here was to kind of give people an overview of some of the impacts that they may be noticing in their lives. I know I gave you an earlier slide and some reasons and symptoms of what compassion fatigue specifically does for us, but other things that we ourselves might notice, or we may even notice in colleagues. But don't really pick up on it right away until it starts to kind of really demonstrate itself. But these are kind of cues that we can kind of pick up on or start to even begin to notice if we educate ourselves on what they could possibly look like, and how we function as a result of the impacts of what compassion fatigue can do, as well as burnout. So I'll give you just a minute to take a look and scan that slide. I won't go into too much detail, but again, it's something that I think would be really helpful to just familiarize yourself, especially, as a colleague of someone. These might be behaviors that are kind of out of personality for some people that you work with, and also just kind of out of sorts for you as well too. All right, so to kind of fully jump in to the compassion side of things. So when we think about compassion, I like to think of it as being your compass, your guide, a way of kind of getting you back to a place of understanding yourself. And what a recognition of self-compassion is, and a practice of self-compassion is a way of reconnecting you to your values, your priorities, your passions, your motivations, the things that motivate you, the things that inspire you, the things that make you tick, the things that are important to you. And that guide allows you to come back to where you are. Now, I can't see anybody here today, but I'm sure, if we were to do a raise of hands, I'm sure there may be a good chunk of people here today that would, if you were asked the question, have you been feeling like yourself? Or have you said to people, I don't feel like me? I have a sense that there may be quite a few people that have felt that way or have identified that over the last while. I know for myself, that is something that I definitely had to contend with, where I could get up, I could get going, I could go throughout the day, but I just didn't feel like I was there. I just didn't feel like myself. I think the lack of self-compassion is what can lead us into those feelings of feeling detached from who we are. And so the first step to the practice of self-compassion is to try and reattach to those, because these are the things that make us who we are. These are the things that help us connect to the person we want to be. And we have to spend some time actually living through that and remembering what those are. These are all things that attend to physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, and our social needs as people. Now, most importantly, compassion is the act of making space. Now, a lot of people will stop me and say, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to make space? Well, I think to make space is kind of like decluttering your life. When you have been living in a space for a long time, everyone has their either spring cleaning that they've done in their lives, or just that general declutter, or the garage sale that they'll have, in the summertime. And really what they're doing is they're literally making space. They're physically moving items. They're kind of purging. They're getting rid of the things that they don't feel like they need anymore, so they can make space to just be, to exist, and to prioritize the things that they haven't had the chance to prioritize. And that is exactly what we're doing here. We are kind of purging some of the things that can leave and move out of our space, but more importantly, we are making space for the kindness we have not been showing ourselves, that self-compassion, that self-love that has not had a place to be and to be practiced. Our values and the act of taking space for ourselves is what allows us to eventually let others in and value others as well too. So this diagram is something I really like explaining self-compassion from, because in this diagram, I even like the color selection that they chose, because they talk about self-compassion, they put it in blue, and then they put the threat and drive system, which I'll explain in a moment what that means, but and they put that in red. And so what image that pops up for me, and hopefully maybe it might be something that you resonate as well too, is I think of water over a fire to try and put the flames out. And I feel like self-compassion is very much that. It's a way of sort of putting out the fire that kind of brews inside of us, especially when we are our most stressed or our most overwhelmed. And so self-compassion activates something that we all have in ourselves called the soothe system. And the soothe system is what helps deactivate what we call our threat system and our drive system. So our threat system, I'm sure everyone's heard of fight, flight, or freeze. And so that is the way that it's our survival mechanism and our way that we kind of cope and engage throughout life. And so when our threat system is activated, it is the thing that helps us protect ourselves when we feel threatened. And the drive system is our motivation, the things that drive us, the things that push us through and keep us going every day. Now, you would think of that as being a very positive thing, because if it's something that's making me keep going, then I probably don't want to turn that off. Fair, you're probably right. Having said that, though, a drive system in overdrive can actually be harmful for you, because when we constantly keep going and we constantly push beyond our capacity, eventually we cause harm to ourselves, and there's only so far we can go. You know, a vehicle can only go so far on a nearly empty tank, because after a while, then it's on the side of the road and you need to call a tow truck. And so it's really important that we can recognize what that looks and feels like beforehand, so we can be proactive. And that's what self-compassion is. It really is a proactive step to avoid the occurrence of compassion fatigue, and eventually burnout as well too. But it is also the thing that can help bring us back from it. Okay, so I have a short video that I want to share with all of you. This video is a comparison of what empathy and sympathy are. And the reason why I think this is a really helpful video in terms of explaining the difference is that we use empathy as helpers and as supporters. And it's good for us to understand what empathy takes out of us, or what it requires of us. Because I think understanding how much of it we use in the day and how much of it we need to kind of do our jobs and to engage in the work that we perform at, it helps us understand why we need to fill that tank that much more. So I think when I show my video, the screen will probably change. Chad will probably just get you to help me, and hopefully it's working. Let's see here.
You'll want to use that sharing function again.
Oh, right. Okay, hang on.
And then the plays in the bottom left corner.
Okay. I've got the video on, and then I hit show screen again, right?
And so if you move your mouse, you'll see the play button in the bottom left corner of the square.
Oh, right. Okay, right.
You wanted to click the stop sharing, stop showing video button.
That's it, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We may have. I thought it was working, but I see a few people saying that they didn't see the video or hear it. So
Oh,
perhaps there was a bit of an issue. I actually heard it quite well on my end, but that I'm seeing a few who are saying they have as well. So it might be just sort of kind of a localized issue. But the video will be on the video will be on the replay anyway. So if you missed it, you can certainly check it there.
okay, perfect. Sorry about that to anyone that wasn't able to hear, but if you do see the address at the bottom here, you want to just jot that down. It is a YouTube video that is available to anybody, so you can take a look at it as well too. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. Chad, is the presentation showing up again?
Yes, it is.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so we'll move along here. So I know I've talked a lot about compassion. I've talked about compassion fatigue. So now I need to teach you guys a little bit about how to start engaging in more compassion in your life. And I've just got a few short exercises that I want to actually work with you and show you how to do them, because I think that these are things that, although we are crazy busy in our days, I can only begin to understand, I'm sure, what it's been like in healthcare. I'm not even going to try to really fully understand it, because I don't think I would even be able to wrap my head around what you all do. So in that, and knowing that, you know, there's not a lot of time in the day, I'm sure, to just take a minute for yourself. So the shorter and the more specific the exercise, I think the more helpful as well too. So I'm sure a lot of you have engaged or been educated in some way about intentional breathing or breathing exercises. There's so many. Today's exercise I'm going to do with you, again, is probably not very different from what you've seen or heard before. Maybe this is completely new to you. So we'll just do it really quick and easy, but I'm going to combine this to what compassion is as well too, because when you make an intention while breathing, your intention in this exercise is meant to be compassion. So as you can see in the diagram, you're going to just place one hand on your chest, the other one on your diaphragm. The reason for this is because when we breathe and when we're taking intentional breaths, it's very different from how we breathe just generally day to day, because technically we should really be breathing from our diaphragms. It's not something that's really that usually built in for us. So we want to make sure that our chests stay moving, moving the least, and then making sure that it's your diaphragm that's doing the work, because as you take a deep breath in and you're going to take it in through your nose, your diaphragm should expand, and so you should feel the hand on your diaphragm moving forward. And then when you exhale, that should be compressing and the diaphragm should go inward. So really your hand on your stomach should be the one that's moving the most here. If you notice that your chest is moving more and more, just take a minute and kind of reassess the breath so that it's coming straight into your belly. The other thing I want you to do, and this is where the compassion comes in, is when you take your first breath in, I want you to take that breath in for the people in your life, whether it's your patients or your friends, your family, people you care for. I want you to take that first breath in for them. And then when you take that breath out, you're going to blow everything out, and that breath out is for you. Okay? So we're going to try that. We'll just take 5 breaths together instead of 10 in the presentation here. And if you want to stop and hold your breath for a second or two, that kind of just helps build a little bit of tension and makes the exhale that much stronger. So if you want to do that with me, we'll close our eyes if that's comfortable as well too. So we'll take our first breath in through our nose, out through our mouths, in, hold 2, 3, out, in, hold 2, 3, out, in, hold 2, 3, and out, and one more, in, Hold 2, 3, and out. Okay. So again, really quick exercise, something you can do at your desks or while you're taking a short walk outside, or, again, doesn't have to be a very long exercise that you can practice. You can practice it for as short as you would like and for as long as you would like. Now, when I asked you to take that breath in for others and then to exhale that breath for you, if you noticed that one breath was longer and one breath shorter than the other, take a minute to reflect on that, because what that might identify for you is that perhaps the breath in potentially is coming in longer than the breath out, and that might give you some insight in your day-to-day of how much you give to others and how much you actually take for yourself. That was something when I first did this exercise, I recognized that almost immediately afterwards, where I noticed my breath in was much longer than the breath out. And it sort of dawned on me that I'm not really giving that much time for myself. So you can actually just take a minute and do the exercise again while trying to even out the breaths in and out, so that we're taking in and pushing out the same. Okay, so the other exercise is a grounding meditation that I'd like to take you through. Again, very short, easy exercise. Again, you can make it as long as you would like, or you can shorten it to something that's a little bit more time appropriate for you, depending on where you're at and what you're doing. So what I'm going to get you to do is just to feel as relaxed as you can in the space that if you're sitting, or you can do this while you're standing, but I would recommend sitting. I do recommend people closing their eyes just to limit any distractions, and really all you need to hear is my voice for this exercise. Your hands can stay on your laps, it could be crossed or just on your thighs. If you're not sure if you're feeling like you're sitting straight, a nice quick exercise you can do is just take your shoulders and press them right up to your ears and hold it there for a quick second and then release. I find that helps me remind myself where my relaxed shoulder state should be. So again, if you're comfortable, feel free to close your eyes and just listen to my voice, and I will walk you through the exercise. So I want you to imagine your feet in the ground. It can be in the grass, or it can be on some warm soil. And as you picture your feet on the ground, I want you to imagine roots extending from your toes, the ball of your feet, and your heels, growing into the soil, expanding, getting thicker, growing deeper into the ground. Then I want you to feel those roots expanding beyond you, down further into the ground and across, spreading wide. Holding your feet securely to the ground, keeping you safe and grounded, making you feel present, making you feel aware. Then I want you to picture your loved ones. Picture the people you care for, and imagine them standing around you with their feet on the ground as well, with roots extending from their feet as well into the ground. And as you think of this, imagine these roots intertwining with each other, folding into one another, expanding further, and all the roots connecting, braiding, making each root that much stronger. Feel the love and the care from those loved ones around you, extending from their roots to yours. Again, making you feel grounded, making you feel loved, secure, and safe. Allow those roots to make you feel strong and remind you that you are not alone. and that there are people that care for you, that will keep you safe, that will keep you loved, and that will keep you grounded. Take a moment, take a deep breath in and out. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So this is one of my absolute favorite grounding exercises, simply because it is so helpful in helping us remind ourselves of what is available to us, what care and true love feels like. And I think that is where compassion is at its epitome, because it's a reminder of why we deserve to care for ourselves, because there's so much love around us as well. And it helps us bring that in and remind ourselves when it is sometimes the hardest to remind of its existence. So I see that I'm a little over time here. I apologize. So I'm just gonna, mention these next few here for you. This is another presence exercise, very similar to the grounding exercise, but actually spelled out an acronym of presence. So identifying the ability to pause, relax into the moment and breathe like we did in the first intentional breathing exercise. Enhance the awareness of breath, so to continue to practice the breath, allowing it to stabilize. Sensing the inner body, so doing sort of a physical body scan as we talked about earlier, and identifying spaces where we may be feeling tension, pain, exhaustion, as we can hold that in our bodies, and then turning to compassion to allow for kindness towards those parts of ourselves. Expanding awareness outwards is simply an understanding of where we might be projecting some of our critical thoughts or experiences outwards. And then noticing those values that we talked about earlier that ground us, the truths that help us keep attached to who we are. And then center and ground yourself in the present moment. And once you've done that, you can extend and start to project that kindness outwards. For those who find yoga and meditation very helpful in their lives, I wanted to really recommend some other resources for you as well. So if you find yourself on our Blue Cross website at any time and look under our resources side, we actually have a yoga meditation. It's called Soul Nourishment, and the program is dedicated to various videos, anywhere between 4 to 20 minutes. So again, time-wise, something that is a little more convenient based on the day that you're having. And there are various themes that you can practice yoga or meditation through. So the 4 themes that we currently have are empowerment to resilience, grounding through uncertainty, relaxing the mind, body, and soul, and releasing the fear, which are all, I think, very relevant topics to where we are currently, as we have navigated the pandemic. And then finally, a self-care wheel. I'm sure this is fairly familiar to you if you've heard it before. If you haven't, it's really a guide, again, to kind of help us identify some of the things that we need in our day-to-day. And as you kind of engage in your reflection about those values that we talked about earlier in the presentation, this exercise is a great follow-up to kind of identify, when you identify those needs, what those needs require to kind of continue to meet those needs. And so sometimes it's nice that we just have a guide that we can refer back to when we're most overwhelmed, and it's just overwhelming at that time to think about what it is that we need. So having this somewhere in your wallet or somewhere visible, like on a fridge or near a computer where you're sitting, just to kind of help give you those gentle reminders. This is actually a great workplace exercise as well too, that you can kind of do kind of as an icebreaker in team meetings, where everyone kind of can break up into smaller groups, kind of write down the things that they do for themselves, and then share it with other teammates who might find that information helpful if it's something that they've never done before. So I encourage you to engage in this if you would find it helpful, or for your teams. And that concludes my presentation today. So my apologies for the time here, but I just wanted to just exemplify, from the EAP perspective, our vision very much is to to look at mental health as both a physical and a mental experience, because both are so deeply impacted in the things that we experience. And so we do look at them as co-occurring experiences and focus very much on addressing both. So I hope that today's presentation allowed you to see how those two can be adapted and connected, and practiced when it comes to self-compassion.
Great.
And that
Thanks.
concludes my presentation. Thank you very much, everyone. And I am open to questions.
Great. Thanks a lot, Cindy. That was a terrific presentation, and I think a lot of really good information that and tips that people will be able to use in their day-to-day lives. We did have a couple questions of people wondering if they'd be able to see this, have the slide presentation. Is that an issue? Yeah, yeah. What we'll do is we'll sorry, is that?
Yeah,
that
no,
would
that's
work. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll post it on the shared health page with the video. So you'll see a link to the video, or sorry, to the slides on the on that page as well. So
Absolutely.
I don't see any questions at the immediate moment. So if you have any questions for Cindy, please, as I mentioned, enter them into the question box, and we'll present them to Cindy. See, a few people said they were able to see the video, so a couple weren't. So as I mentioned, that video will be available also on the replay. I was just kind of curious. One question I thought of as you were going through your presentation, and I know you know, obviously this is very important, having that self-compassion so you can be there for others. But I know when you hear people talk, they often feel like almost like they feel a bit guilty when they start worrying about themselves and that self-compassion, like that they're feeling selfish. How do people kind of get over that roadblock and understand that it's not selfish? It's a vital piece of you know, not only your own mental well-being, but also you being there to help others.
Yeah, no, that's a terrific question, Chad, and a great one, especially relating to this work, because that is what most people contend with, is the guilt. And I think that people in the helping field have a very strong compass for guilt because of how much they care about what they do. You wouldn't feel guilty if you didn't genuinely care about what it is that you were doing. So in the same breath, you can use that sense of care to help understand why it's so important to prioritize that compassion and that self-care, because simply you can do more for others when you look after yourself. And you'll actually be a better helper, and you'll do more. And something just to kind of relate this to my own experience, this is what I found, you know, becoming a mom for the first time, was that I would feel so guilty if I just took an extra 5 minutes in the shower when I'm like, I should be with my daughter. And I would feel so bad, and I would come rushing out. And even though my husband would assure me, like, she's fine, she's okay, like, you can go take a few minutes, I would come rushing out thinking, oh, I'm so guilty, like, that's not my time to take. But then I would stop and start to remind myself, like, if I took that extra 5 minutes, that's probably another extra 5 minutes I could give her later because I felt a little bit more full. Or that extra 5 minutes allowed me to have the extra energy to deal with the meltdown that came later on that day, right? So the more you actually give yourself, the more you're actually going to be able to keep giving others. And so it's kind of in the same breath, you know, turning that guilt the other way and saying, actually, the more I do here, the more I'm going to be able to offer to the people around me, and I'll do better, and I'll give more, in fact, because of giving myself that. And so I find that sometimes is the best messaging to kind of help people kind of contend with that guilt. And something actually I forgot to mention in this presentation, it's usually my favorite thing to bring up, is I like you coming at it from the reverse golden rule perspective. So, you know, they say, you know, do unto others as you wish to be done unto yourself. In the same breath, when it comes to self-compassion, do unto yourself as you would do to others. Because if you would never criticize a person or put someone down for taking time for themselves, or criticize them for taking that time, you would never say that to someone you cared about. Like, oh, no, you shouldn't be taking that time for yourself. Or, oh, no, you're a bad person for taking. You wouldn't say that to anyone that you truly cared about. So why is it okay for you to say that to yourself? So that's the reverse golden rule. Treat yourself as you would treat the people around you.
That you raise an excellent point. I think reframing that is a critical piece of it, because yeah, it's hard, like you mentioned from your own experience, it's hard to get over that barrier. I have two children of my own. I know from where you speak, and and so
Yeah.
it is hard to get over that barrier, and yeah, it's but yeah, reframing that I think is an important piece of the discussion. Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the question. That's an excellent question.
Great. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions pop up, so maybe we'll just end things there. And I'll just say thank you to everybody who was able to join us today, and of course, thank you to Cindy for this presentation. We had a comment just noting that someone appreciated that you did not just talk about compassion fatigue, but also gave some strategies to help. So I think obviously some people are able to have some areas that they're taking away from this, and lots of helping strategies moving forward.
Awesome.
So,
That's great.
So, and as we mentioned earlier, this will be posted to the Shared Health COVID-19 mental health resources page, and also usually they post it to their YouTube channel as well. So please take a look on that page for this. It'll be posted in the next probably early to mid next week, so you can keep an eye out for it. So again, with that, I'll say thank you to Cindy, and hope everybody has a good rest of their day. Bye.
Take care.